Always good to catch up with Shaun OHara. Does a great job, NFL Network Analyst. You can catch him on the editions of NFL Network's NFL Game Day morning, which will air Saturday at 12 noon Eastern, Sunday at 7 o'clock. So we'll have an opportunity to break down some of these divisional matchups. Of course, former Super Bowl champ with the Giants and also New Jersey guy as well. So, Shaun, always good to catch up, pal. How you been?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right, let's get into talk or walk some of the Eagles fans off the ledge here, because it seems as though everyone, they have to take this the high road, the underdog, the us against the world mentality with Nick Foles. What would be the key to the game here for the Eagles to pull off this upset?
Man, I thought it was always sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know where the dark cloud came from.
I don't know what to tell you. So.
Well, listen, I think people are obviously, it's a what have you done for me lately league, and, the week-to-week cliches are all out there. But, look, if everybody's questioning, can Nick Foles throw the ball, and can Nick Foles win a football game? Absolutely. So I don't understand why the hysteria over Nick Foles, and the last game was basically a preseason game, and it was you play guys just so that you're not giving them the full week off mentally. But you watch the Giants game, and look, the Giants defense has given up a lot of touchdowns all year long, but Nick Foles threw 4 red zone touchdowns in that game. That's the Nick Foles that I see. The question when I look at quarterbacks, can they decipher the defense?
Right.
Nick Foles can do that. Can you make good decisions? Nick Foles can do that. And can you deliver? It's the 3 Ds with quarterbacking. All right. Nick Foles he just missed on some of the deliveries. I went back and kind of broke down some of his throws to Ertz in the red zone against Oakland, and he made all the right reads, and he just missed high. Nick Foles, when he does miss, the ball tends to sail on him and it gets away from him. So that's where turnovers can happen. You expose your receivers and tight ends to getting big hits. But I think Nick Foles will be just fine. I think he can handle the game. I don't think the magnitude of the game is going to get away from him. I think he's a really good thrower. He threw it all over the place in college. He had a very productive year with Chip Kelly. Obviously, everybody in Philly remembers that. But I think what a luxury it is to have Nick Foles. I mean, when Carson Wentz went down, you look around the league at a lot of teams whose starting quarterback went down. That's it. The season was a wrap.
You're in trouble. You're done.
Yeah. So I fully expect them to try to run the football, though. And look, you don't want Nick Foles and really any quarterback in 3rd and 7+. Carson Wentz was kind of the X factor with that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw him get out of 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, dodge a defender, shrug somebody off, and then make a big play. That's not going to be Nick Foles. He shouldn't have to do that because they should be able to run the football. But I also like the Eagles' defense. So the way their defense has played against the run and the way they've gotten after the quarterback, I think Eagles fans should be smiling.
Listen, I think this game's going to be won, and I know it's cliche to say, but I think it's going to be won or lost in the trenches. And I just think the Eagles have to establish the ground game early on. I think both quarterbacks are going to get smacked around a little bit. And you look at the Eagles, I don't have any concerns when you look at their interior pass rush because you have a guy like Fletcher Cox that can basically wreck a game. To me, if Foles is going to have to make a play or two, we have to just wait to see if he can make that play or two during crunch time if it comes down to that. And then ultimately, can you get Atlanta in those 3rd and long situations? Because that's the one thing, and you know this, I mean, if anything, if they stop the run early on, they put a little more pressure on Matt Ryan, they start to knock him around, hit him, get him off his game a little bit. Now Schwartz can kind of pin the ears of that defense back a little bit, and they can take more shots, and they can blitz a little more, and they can be a little more aggressive and maybe force some turnovers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like Matt Ryan is a little bit like Tom Brady, and he does a good job in the pocket, moving around. He's much more athletic and much more mobile outside the pocket. But if you can get pressure, over the guards, Matt Ryan, that's where he struggles. And look, last week against the Rams, Aaron Donald, he was throttling the left guard, Ben Garland. I've never seen a guard spend more time on the ground in that game than Ben Garland did. And, he had filled in admirably for Andy Vitri.
Right.
But the D-line, I mean, they're going to be chomping at the bit, and they're going to be fighting over who can line up over Ben Garland. So Fletcher Cox, he's going to be over the right guard, Wes Schweitzer, who's had his struggles too. Look, Aaron Donald was basically unblockable throughout the first half last week. I expect Fletcher Cox to have a big game, in the run and the passing game. But I look at third down. When the thing that the Eagles have is they have so many good rushers. You've got Vinny Curry coming in. You bring Brandon Graham and you put him down on the guard. You got Chris Long on the outside too. You've got fresh bodies, so they're going to be rotating guys. So those third and longs you're talking about, you could be rotating in a guy who hasn't played, on the ninth play of the drive with fresh legs.
Yep.
That's a nightmare for offensive linemen. So I think that's a mismatch in the Eagles' favor. And to your point, if you can get Matt Ryan in those third and longs, he doesn't have as many options. Certainly, you can't just rely on the checkdowns and everything. So he's going to have to force the issue. But I think this Eagles defense is much better than the Rams defense that they saw last week. The real question really, and what you alluded to, is, to me, Nick Foles has got to make probably 4 or 5 throws.
Agree.
All in the red zone.
Yep.
I think they're going to move the ball up and down the field. They're going to be fine with that, and he can convert third downs. It's going to be, when you get in the red zone, can he find Zach Ertz? Can he make that throw to Alshon? Can he punch it into the end zone and not settle for the field goal?
No, it's a great point. And you know this, during the playoffs, the quarterback, during the course of a game, he's going to have to make 2 or 3 plays. I mean, you can't deny it. We've seen it. Switch gears a little bit again. Shaun OHara does a great job, NFL Network Analyst, joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Rich Quinones here. I saw that you mentioned with that Tennessee-New England game, and I'll agree with your assessment. You mentioned Matt Ryan. You get him off the spots. The only way to me that Tennessee pulls off this upset is you have to just harass Tom Brady, and you have to force some turnovers, shorten up the field, flip the field a little bit. Other than that, I just don't know how Tennessee can beat New England.
Tennessee wants to make this game ugly. They're not going to be. I mean, look, let's be honest. If New England scores 25 points, it's a wrap. I think for Tennessee to win, they've got to keep them. It's got to be 20-17, 17-14, something like that. But the one thing that kept Tennessee in the game last week against Kansas City is their defense. Now, look, everybody saw Dick LeBeau kind of gather the defense up on the sidelines. They're down 14-0, and he said, "Look, guys, let's just lock in." And that moment, I think, saved their season, because they went out in the second half and dominated the Chiefs. And everybody said, myself included, why didn't they run the ball more with Kareem Hunt?
Right.
Well, Tennessee did a great job of shutting down the run, and they just really – they were a completely different defense in the second half. I think Kansas City had the ball for 10 minutes in the second half, 21 plays. If you can do that to Tom Brady, give him only 10 minutes in the second half, you're going to win the game. You got a shot, at least. So I think for Tennessee, the pressure, obviously, look, everybody says, how do you beat Tom Brady? Well, yeah, of course, you got to get to him. You got to sack him. You got to get pressure on him. It doesn't always have to be a sack. It can be a hit as he's throwing the ball, just kind of make him uncomfortable. But if you can do that with your front four, you can't rely on the blitz to get pressure on Tom Brady. You got to do it with your front four. Tennessee does a good job of that. They do a lot of twists. Dick LeBeau is always scheming. He doesn't just rush 4 guys straight at you. He's always going to change the angles, try to create a twist to shorten the angle and get a looper coming right down the A and the B gap. That's kind of where he's established pressure. That's what I think they're going to try to do to Brady.
And Kansas City, 64 yards. I thought you were going to say the only thing that got Tennessee back in the game was Andy Reid. Can we go back to that game for a second? That's a horrible loss.
I'm still scratching my head.
Because let me ask you something. If you're an offensive lineman and you know you have the league's leading rusher, how do you not, if anything, just pound the rock, a little time of possession? You're not asking Alex Smith to throw you back in the game because you have an 18-point lead. That's a really horrible loss at home with that head coach and that quarterback and some of those weapons they have.
Yeah, there's really no excuse, and what a sour note for Matt Nagy to lead the building and then go and start his head coaching career in Chicago. That's going to sit. That's going to be stuck in Andy Reid's throat for the whole off season, because to your point, man, I mean, all they had to do was just you just wear the clock down. let that group just kind of start wearing down. I mean, Tennessee has a pretty good defense, so they limited the big plays. When Kelsey went out, you could kind of sense that it was like, all right, what are they going to do offensively now? And they almost, they just didn't know what to do when they lost Kelsey. So I thought they should have definitely just fed Kareem Hunt and just kind of let him wear down the defense. He's young enough, he's strong enough. He's much better in the second half, I feel like, than even in the first half. So they're still kicking themselves, but Tennessee made a couple of big plays.
They did.
On defense, and it's crazy because they were the team that was behind, yet they stayed patient with the run, stayed committed with the run, and they were rewarded, and Derrick Henry took over the game.
Yeah, he had a great game, and real quick, just to kind of clean up on that one, when you really think about it, even though when Kelsey goes out, it's just Andy Reid's MO. I mean, he just tightens up in so many spots. We've seen it for years when he was with the Eagles, and the one time he needed to run the ball, he elected not to. I said this during the opening monologue. I think the game of the weekend, look, if you like offense, Minnesota and the Saints, then you have your storylines, but to me, it's Jacksonville and Pittsburgh, because I still think Jacksonville feels as though they're not being respected. They're not being recognized for having this great defense. And if there's a team, if they get by Pittsburgh and there's a team that potentially is built to beat New England, I think it's Jacksonville. Now, the storyline is going to be, can the quarterback make some plays? But I think they have to not only reestablish their ground game, but my goodness, if you look at their defensive front, you look at their corners, their DBs, their secondary, just from position to position on the defensive side of the ball, Jacksonville, they can really make life miserable for that Steelers offense.
Yeah, and for Ben, I know, he came out this week and said, I'm really looking, who I want to play, and, he was looking forward to the rematch. This is not the defense that you want to throw 55 passes against. And I think, Ben threw 55 passes in their Week 5 matchup, and, threw the 5 interceptions. I don't think he's going to throw 5 more interceptions, and 2 of those ended up in touchdowns for Jacksonville. So I don't expect their defense to score twice for them, so this will be a very tough game. This game's come down to a field goal, let's be honest. And who knows, it could be 9-6. I don't know. But
that's Jacksonville's game, though. That's what they want.
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny because those games are just as exciting. The Buffalo-Jacksonville game, there weren't a lot of touchdowns, but you feel the urgency with every single play because man, it's such a tough game that one big play can completely change the outcome of the game, and that's what's going to be fun to watch. I think for Pittsburgh, after that loss to Jacksonville, I went back and looked at Le'Veon Bell. He had 15 carries in that loss for 47 yards. The next 2 games, he had, I think combined, he had almost 60 carries and 300 yards in the next 2 games.
Wow.
So they said, look, let's
ride the horse
again.
Yep.
Yeah, we're not throwing 50 times again. Let's get back to what we do. They got back to smash mouth football. They fed Le'Veon Bell. That to me is the key. And you take it back to last year, the AFC Championship game in New England, when Le'Veon Bell came in with the groin injury and was hurt, and basically you took him out of the game. That offense was a mess. They didn't know what to do. Ben looked lost. He still threw for, I think, 300 yards, but it was not the same offense. Le'Veon Bell is the key for Pittsburgh, and you mentioned Jacksonville and Blake Bortles. Look, I think Bortles, he's never had to carry this team all season long. I think he's got to make just a couple of throws. He doesn't have to throw 4 touchdowns. If he could throw 1 or 2, they win the game.
An extended drive with his legs.
Yeah, he can do that. That's fine. And you know what? For them, a punt is a win because their defense has played so well. I think all he has to do is he can't turn the ball over. He can't give Pittsburgh a short field and give them the easy layup. But yeah, I agree with you. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Certainly Leonard Fournette and his little battle with Mike Mitchell, the safety. I can't wait to see the first time those 2 guys collide.
And Coughlin's done a heck of a job down there. He's done a heck of a job. I mean, you see the cultural change already because they expect
Doug,
now to be,
Yeah, he's done a good job just kind of, charting where you want to take the boat. But I think Doug Marrone,
yes,
he's kind of the guy that doesn't really get enough credit. He is really the guy that's talking to the team every day and, handling, the personality of that group. And I tell you what, they've got a feisty group. So, Doug, he's a big guy. He may not be the most outspoken guy, but they've definitely taken on his personality.
The Jacksonville team, the way their defense is starting to click, and I know you didn't play on that 2017, but I remember that 2017 with the Giants where even though they went to Dallas and they beat up Dallas and Eli made a couple plays, the defense started to make plays, the big win in Green Bay, and then with the Patriots. I just get, the defense, they're taking on the personality of their head coach, and they got a nastiness to them. To me, I would love to see them play the Patriots in the AFC Championship. I think it would be a hell of a game. Two more before I let you get out of here. Quickly on the Saints and the Vikings. It seems as though everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop here with Case Keenum. And I've been on the Vikings bandwagon since this kid took over. Can you recall a time, even just playing, playing in the NFL or now covering the NFL, where have you seen a quarterback make this type of progression from a journeyman to now to a bona fide starter?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sure there's been some cases where guys have stepped in and had big years like that. But, I think Case is just, everybody has said they've been slow to get on the Keenum bus. And, when you look at the throws that he's made, I mean, look, they're not all go routes. He's completing deep passes. He's completing intermediate passes. He's really running the offense. But the other thing, too, is he's not taking sacks, and the ball's coming out. So this has really just kind of been the perfect storm for Minnesota. And when Sam Bradford went down, and look, Bradford threw for 346 yards against the Saints in Week 1, and now it's going to be a different Saints defense than we saw earlier in the year. But, Case Keenum can have a big game, too. I think he's really impressed everybody. Every week I turn on the film, and I say, man, he's just adding another layer to his resume. And look, this is what Case Keenum can be with good protection, and that to me has been the difference with Minnesota. Their defense was good last year. Their offensive line was awful, and they completely changed the offensive line. They brought in Mike Remmers, they brought in Riley Reif, they drafted Pat Elflein. The offensive line has been phenomenal, and that has been the difference in the quarterback play, in the offensive play. You've got all kinds of options when it's second and third and manageable.
Yes.
And we've seen Pat Shurmur thrive now, whereas last year they didn't have those options.
And they can run the ball, and they have wideouts as well with Thielen and Diggs. And then we mentioned Murray and Keenum, as you alluded to, living to fight another down, just not making careless mistakes. All right, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this one. So the Giants hire Gettleman. They've gone through 6 now candidates. I guess the hot name was Patricia there. You got that pedigree with New England, defensive guy. Do you buy into this? So when people say, when a guy like Gettleman comes out and says, I want a leader of men, we want to change the culture, I don't necessarily, I love hearing that, but I don't necessarily then look at a guy's track record as a coordinator and say, well, if they had a great track record as a coordinator, they're going to be a good fit as a head coach. Because we already saw kind of blow up in their face when they hired McAdoo. So with that being said, do you put any stock in when someone says, well, this guy's a great coordinator, so you know he's going to be a great head coach? And ultimately, who do you think is going to be their next head coach?
Well, look, there's cases for each side. Kyle Shanahan, for years, everybody talked about him for being a good head coach and because he was a really good coordinator, and you just don't know how it's going to pan out. He's done a good job. Adam Gase down in Miami is another guy that comes to mind. For years, he turned down a couple of head coaching jobs as a coordinator because he didn't feel like it was the right fit. I think he's a heck of a coach. The wins haven't really portrayed that, but you look at Doug Peterson. He was a coordinator not even for that long. Maybe like a year, maybe 2, and he's done a great job. So there are those guys, and then you take the Josh McDaniels who goes up to Denver and gets fired, with 4 games left in his second year. So, look, there's different circumstances with each one. The question really to me is, what is your plan at quarterback? Because if your plan is to go get a young quarterback with the 2nd pick overall, and then you're going to turn around and bring in a first-time head coach, you're setting yourself up for some growing pains. And you're going to, that's fine, but you just have to be aware that this is what we're committing to, and the next year or 2 might be a little bumpy.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if they want that. I don't know if the Giants fans want that, because this season was so off the rails that I don't even know that they can withstand that. So I look at it like, look, if you've got Eli, you've got a franchise quarterback that can win you games in the fourth quarter. That's really what this game has come down to. Can you get the game into the fourth quarter, and do you have a quarterback that can make the throws to win the game? Eli can do that? Okay, fine. Let's use that pick as currency. Let's bring in an offensive system that can win with Eli, and let's go out and win some games. We'll use the second pick as currency and get as many players as we can to help us win. If that's the equation, then I think you got to bring in somebody that's got an offense that can win right now with Eli. So it's interesting to see Matt Patricia, Steve Wilks, all these defensive coaches coming in. And, I've heard great things about Steve Wilks. Obviously, nobody knows much of anything about Matt Patricia because everything's so secret up there. But
right.
We've seen his success. My question with each one of those guys is, that's great. If you hire them, who's running the offense, and what offense is it?
You don't want to put too much on their plate.
Yeah, personally, I feel like Josh McDaniels is kind of the guy that they want. But I hear he's also kind of being coveted by a couple of other teams, and so there might be a little bit of a bidding war. And that could kind of change things. But there's so many. I've kind of said this before. Right now, David Gettleman, he's remodeling a house, and the biggest question is, what do you start with? Do you start with the curtains, or do you start with the sofa and the big furniture? You've got you can't put up curtains and then you buy all the furniture, and now it doesn't match. You got to replace the curtains, and he's got a lot going on right now, and he just hopes he can move that bus.
Yeah, that's a great point. Shaun, great stuff as always, pal. Keep up the great work with the NFL Network. Enjoy the games this weekend, bud.
All right, thanks. You too, man. Best weekend ever.
Yeah, absolutely. You got it. All right, take care of yourself, Shaun O'Hara. Great job with the NFL Network.